Welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. I'm Captain Rick Riles. This is where we check in and see how the fishing is all the way from Costa Rica to the coast of Florida and on around into the Gulf. Settle back, listen up, because we got some great reports coming your way, and we're going to start long distance with our buddy from Nosara Paradise Rentals, Craig Sutton. Craig, are you with us?
Yes, sir, Captain Ricky.
Oh, man, it's good to hear your voice. How's everything in Nosara?
Man, it couldn't be any better. I'm just sitting here, just came off the Explorer with Captain Fico. Just a beautiful day. Just watch the sun go down here, and it's God's country.
Oh,
it really is.
I've seen those sunsets over there, buddy. They sure are fantastic. Tell me about your fishing this week.
It's been real good. A lot of sailfish. The pattern kind of been the same as last week. A lot of sailfish, good numbers, double digits on full days. Some real big Dorado. And these sailfish are real nice size. Small yellowfin tuna and a few wahoo. We lost a real big one 2 days ago on this boat, right at the gaff shot. When we catch a wahoo with this mono and these circle hooks, trust me, it's unusual. It's not an easy catch. Nothing inshore right now. The blue water's right up against the beach, and it's got the rooster fish and the capara where they're a little off. Now, last week, we did catch a nice capara, though. A real nice one, about a 25-pounder. But,
yeah, it's a pretty fish.
It's been one day it's good inshore, and then it goes a week without, the water not clear. I'm not too clear.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I understand. I don't need to ask you who missed that gaff shot on that big wahoo, do I? I mean, it wouldn't be anybody I know, would it?
No, it wasn't me.
Okay, I just wondered.
He didn't really miss the gaff shot. He said right when he got to the boat, they were getting ready to gaff it, and then the hook came out.
Because Craig, curious minds want to know. I just wondered who missed it.
It wasn't me, bro. I wish I could say off the fish tastic off Javel I missed the gaff shot the last couple of weeks, but that doesn't happen either.
Gotcha. All right, now listen, people want to come to Nosara. Believe me, I've done it. It's the greatest place going if you want to do some blue water fishing. How can they get there?
They can call me up at 904-591-2161. Email me, Craig@fishingnosara.com, or, I guess probably smoke signals too.
Okay, thank you, Craig. We'll talk with you next week.
Likewise, Captain.
All right, buddy. Now we're going to start down the east coast of Florida, and we'll get it rolling with Captain David Boies. David, how are you?
I'm doing great, buddy. Doing great.
Good. I think it's been more of an inshore week. I think it's been more of your kind of week almost all over Florida. How's it been for you?
Yeah, it has, Rick. I mean, this weather, and we still have March to go. The winds of March are always so unpredictable, so you just don't know. And, these poor offshore guys, they just haven't been able to really get out and find any good weather. When they are getting out, though, however, there's been a real good cobia fight going on offshore. I think it's going to be just a phenomenal cobia season this year. The wahoo bite has slowed down. We're seeing a good number of sea bass fishing the bottom and some of the close-in wrecks, but for the most part, it's mainly been the weather's just been shutting these guys down, trying to get off. It seems like we're on this roller coaster. Inshore, Rick, it's just been outstanding. I keep talking about redfish, and there's a reason, because it is just absolutely phenomenal. It's our really go-to fish. I talked to several captains today, and everybody just reported a great day of fishing yesterday on that new moon. The numbers are really in good shape up here in Northeast Florida. There's just such an abundance of redfish and really some quality fish. The water cleared up quite a bit this week. I don't know how this happens. Sometimes these northeaster will blow in some clean ocean water. We had some phenomenal sight fishing yesterday that, I haven't seen all winter, just because we haven't had that cool of water to really kill some of the algae and clean this water up. But yesterday, for some reason, the water was just gin clear. And I heard that from several captains north of the St. Johns, south, and even down into St. Augustine, seeing some really clear water. I tell you one thing I really like it for. This is the time of year I do a lot of my scouting. And that means I go out and I look for new schools of redfish. I look for new locations. And what I'll do is I'll go out on this high tide, put my trolling motor down, don't even put a fishing rod in my hand, And I'm out looking, I'm out scouting, I'm going over the flats and looking at creek mouths and just going up into creeks and just looking for schools of red. You know, when you can see 3 and 4 feet down into the water, it's real easy to spot these fish. The yellowmouth trout's been really good. I talked to some guys that are fishing downtown, and it sounds like the better bite is downtown. Talked to a couple of captains today who fished more in the river, but they said it was not that good of a day. They got a few yellowmouth, but it sounds like the best bite is going to be downtown.
David, it seems to me like our yellowmouth population has been getting better over the last few years, and we're starting to see bigger fish. Have you noticed that?
Absolutely. Back in the days, you know, we used to go out to the jetties. Everything we fished for was out at the jetties, the flounder. And I've caught some of my biggest yellowmouth trout that I've ever seen. Never even knew they got that big out at the jetties. You know, I talked with Downtown Todd this week, and he gave me a real good report that he is seeing phenomenal and some really nice fish. He's saying 16, 17, even some 18-inch trout that he's catching in the downtown area. And he's basically vertical jigging for these fish in deep water. It seems like these yellowmouth trout, they do like that deep water. You got to find these deep holes. I've got several spots along the intercoastal that are notorious speckled trout spots, but right now they're covered up with the yellowmouth trout. You know, all you really need is just a plastic jig. Todd tends to like the root beer colored curly tailed jigs. I like those paddle tails and the natural colors too. But if you don't, live mud minnows are also working good on these yellowmouth trout. And the good thing about the mud minnows, we're picking up quite a few flounder this week. We had 4 keeper flounder yesterday. Now today we only caught 2, but they're not record breakers. They're not big behemoths, but they're nice, 17, 18-inch flounder, which for us for this time of year isn't bad. You know, you can get 3 or 4 keepers, a couple of nice redfish, and about 4 or 5 yellowmouth trout. You're going to bring home a nice bag of fish.
Son, that's not pretty good. That's outstanding. I never remember seeing this many 16, 17, 18-inch flounder in February like we have this year. Awfully glad to see it. I hope it bodes well for us. What does the weather look like for the rest of the week for you?
Not good. We got another front coming through, another cold temperature dropping back down into the 30s. Again, we're on this roller coaster. We're coming into March here. You know what they say, the winds of March. Got to look out for them. You got to pay attention to the weather. But the water temperature's nice, Rick. Pick your days. You can get out. If you can't get offshore, there's some great inshore red fishing right now. I talked to some guys north of the St. John's and down in the St. Augustine, and people were sort of worried about the red fishery when we bumped it up to 2 fish per person. But what we're seeing just a tremendous number of redfish in this area. Some of these schools of reds are hanging right off of some deep water, so you can get your big boat in some of these areas. So don't be discouraged with the weather. Try to go inshore and do some of this great red fishing we have right up here in Northeast Florida.
You got it, Cap. And there's one thing about March. That means April and May are not far away. So as we roll into March, we'll be glad to see it come and then be glad to see it go. David, we always appreciate it. We look forward to talking to you next week.
All right, Rick, tight lines, everybody.
Thank you, buddy. Now let's get on 95 and pedal south for a little while. We'll pull over in the East Central section and talk with our buddy Jim Ross. Jim, how we doing?
We're doing pretty good tonight, Rick.
Good. It's funny. I talked to George Labonte, was up fishing your area the other day and saw your son on a trip. I understand the big drum been biting pretty good up there.
Oh, yeah, they've been solid. The big drum is, it's been one of those things where we used to target these giant redfish on the flats all the time, and now we've got drum on the flats and around some of the bridges and things. So it's pretty consistent fishery.
Jim, what do you think? You've been observing that fishery as long as anybody. Do you think protecting the drum, this is the result of it? Now we're starting to see them? Or is it just
definitely.
That's it, huh?
Yeah, I definitely think so. The slot limit, these commercial limit on it, because these fish don't stand a chance. And I know that we did a great job of banning the gill nets, back in the day. And nobody to thank more so than Florida Sportsman and Carl Wickstrom. But these guys have figured loopholes out, and I've literally watched them with these seine nets take 300, 400, 500 fish out of the water in one day with those nets.
Man, that can't be good. That just can't be good.
When they hit that little slot size that the commercial guys are allowed to keep them at, these guys go in and they are absolutely relentless. They just dog those fish and dog those fish and dog those fish and corral them until they finally get them in that little seine net, and they run them like cattle. As big as the Indian River Lagoon is, it's still a very small fishery when you start taking hundreds of fish per day out of that water.
Yep. You're right. It's a finite number. There's no question. But give me some good news. What else is biting?
Fortunately, some of them have made it through that slot size, and fish that made it through have been able to reproduce. So we're getting better and better and better results out of them. And we're going to start seeing the same thing out of the redfish, because this year is the first year that we started seeing those little rat reds as well, instead of just the upper slot fish and then over slot fish. So that tells me water quality is getting better and the fishery's coming back, and those fish are starting to spawn in here in the Indian River Lagoon system once again.
Jim, there is nothing tickled me more than that my grandsons will be fishing off the dock or something, a little piece of shrimp, and they'll catch an 8-inch redfish. I just think that's fantastic. That's
a sign of a good, healthy fishery right there.
That's right. That's exactly right. Have you heard anything from offshore at all, Jim?
A little bit dolphin activity out to 250 to 300 foot. It's a little bumpy now, but over the week, guys got a chance to get out. And we actually had some cobia showing up as well. So we had cobia in anywhere from about 55 feet out to about the 90-foot area, both out of Canaveral and out of Ponce. And then I got a real good report, 250 to about 325 feet out of Canaveral. Still some peanut dolphin in there, but once again, like you were talking about last week, some better sized dolphins showing up, and some of those fish are even past the point where you can flip them in the boat. They're not flippers anymore; they're gaffers. So we're actually having to get the gaff out on them.
Tell you what, if the day's slow enough, you bring a 6-pounder alongside, I'll find a gaff that'll fit in him.
I also had the pleasure of talking with Joe Percelli the other day. Captain Joe fished the Edgewater, New Simone area. He's been finding some really big trout. And where he's finding them, he says, you got to get as far back away from any kind of deep water as you can possibly imagine, because the dolphin have been relentless chasing the trout around. But the big trout know that, and they also know that the ospreys cannot lift them out of the water. So they'll go get, literally, their backs will be almost out of the water. You'll see their fin and the tip of their tail a lot of times as they're just sitting there floating and hovering in 5 or 6 inches of water. And Captain Joe says when he gets his little flat skiff back in there, and they're making long casts, they're sight casting with these fish, and he has been catching some really nice 25 to 28-inch trout this past week.
Oh, man, that's big fish. That's pretty fish.
Nice, really nice fish. Yeah.
Yep. How big's a 28 down there, Jim? Will he weigh 9 pounds?
If they're in row,
yeah,
and they've eaten a mullet.
Okay.
28-inch fish will go 9 pounds.
That's right.
Most of our fish, when they're heavy, when they have roe in them, you get to 20 inches. So 20 inches is basically 2 pounds.
Right.
21 inches is, a little bigger. 22, 23. When you start following along that 22-inch fish, that 23-inch fish, now he's a 3-pound fish. That 24-inch fish, now he's a 4-pound fish. So that low 20 number is the magic time where they start putting on girth as long as their length. And so the second number typically indicates about what they're going to weigh when they have roe in them or they've eaten a heavy meal. If they haven't and they're a little thin, then they typically weigh about a half to 3/4 of a pound lighter than that.
So what you're saying, if I understand you right, is if you measure the girth of a trout, you'll be very close to his weight. Is that right?
I don't really take them out of the water long enough to measure the girth, but a 25-inch trout is roughly a 5-pound trout. He may go 4 3/4, he may go 5 1/2, but a 25-inch fish is basically 5 pounds.
I see. So what you're saying is the number of inches over 20. Once you get up in that 23 pounds will be about a 3, and then 24 will be about a 4, and 25 be about a 5. That's interesting. That's a good way to judge it. And you said something so important that I'm always impressed with you, my boy. I'm always proud of you, but I'm very proud of you when you said, I don't take them out of the water long enough to measure them. That tells me Nope, that tells me that those big females that you catch are going back, and our guys up in Jacksonville are doing the same thing. If that fish is over 20 inches or over 21 inches probably, they're going to an all-release format, and it's catching on, Jim. It's what's going to save our fishery if we do it.
You know, Rick, we can do this. You don't have to be legislated into doing something. You can make a choice. Guides and anglers alike are choosing to put those bigger fish back in the water because they know that a 17-inch trout, yes, it tastes good. Yes, it's in the slot limit. Yes, it might have 100,000 eggs in it during spawn, but that 23-inch or 24-inch fish might have 200,000 eggs in it. When you only grow a couple of inches, but yet your egg production doubles, the importance, that's just undeniable. You can't deny the fact that those fish have to be put back in the water if we ourselves are going to do something about saving our fisheries in the state of Florida.
Very well said. Very well said. I'm going to let you leave with that. That was a great report. We appreciate it, and I can't wait to talk to you next week.
I'm looking forward to it, Rick.
Thank you, Jim.
Take care out there.
Jim and all of our action spotters every week are brought to you by Yamaha, by Tournament Master Chum, by Phoenix Rods, by Nosara, Paradise Rentals, and by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat spay and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. Okay, now we're going to go to one of my favorite places, Stuart, Florida. I love fishing the Stuart area. They got so many different things going on. We're going to talk to the mayor of Stuart, Captain John Earhart. John, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing, Rick?
Outstanding, buddy. Tell me what's happening in Stuart, Florida.
Well, let's talk inshore fishing first. I got to tell you, Rick, there's been some absolutely phenomenal snook fishing this week. The other day, one of my clients, there's 3 of us on the boat, and we caught over 47 snook on a 4-hour trip.
Wow.
So I got to tell you, there's some really good snook fishing going on right now. You can get your hands on some live pilchards, thread fins, bunkers, any kind of live bait that's got a smaller profile. You're going to catch some snook, and you're going to catch a lot of them. Been catching a lot of keeper-sized snook, a lot of jack crevalles mixed in, bluefish, a few redfish here and there. Been seeing a couple tarpon, but it's been predominantly snook and jacks this week.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. That is a bent rod is what that is, Captain John Earhart.
Yes, it's been pretty good. The offshore fishing, it's been kind of tough to get out there, but when we can get offshore, you're still catching a lot of cobia, some big kingfish, a few sailfish around. We're not catching the numbers that we'd expect for this time of year right this week, but, you know, the cobia and the kingfish have more than made up for it where we're lacking in sailfish bites. You know, I am expecting some mahi to show up any day now, but it's been hit or miss this week. You know, when we can get out there, it seems like it's been like a west wind or the winds haven't really been ideal, and we haven't had a lot of sargassum in close to shore in that 90 to 150 feet like we like. So the mahi fishing's been a little slow, but I would definitely expect it to pick up in the next week or two.
John, is that what makes an east wind so desirable for you guys in Stuart? It brings that sargassum and pretty blue water over from the other side?
Yeah, you know, when I get a nice hard northeast wind or a north wind or even just an east wind, you can expect some good fishing because it's going to blow a lot of that debris inshore, so you don't have to go further out into the Gulf Stream. Otherwise, you need to go 20 or 30 miles out to get to where that major sargassum weed line is if you want to catch the mahis.
Well, if you've got a strong north wind and you go 20 miles out into the Gulf Stream, you're going to be too busy holding on to try and spot the mahi.
Yeah, and that's why, you know, this time of year, if it's rough out, you just can't really make the trek out there. So you're hoping that you get a hard east wind for a week or two in a row, and it pushes all that stuff in close, so you only have to go 5 or 6 miles out.
John, I got to tell you, I have seen more pictures of the big sport fish boats hanging on in the roughest seas I've ever seen fish this winter. I think it's been a rougher tournament season than we've ever seen.
Yeah, it's been pretty windy and it's been pretty rough. So I mean, you better have a big boat or a strong desire to be out there.
Yeah, definitely a strong desire to be out there because it's been plenty rough. Yeah, I've seen a lot of cobia on your reports. I've seen a lot of cobia on Instagram in your area. It's actually shaping up to where it might be a pretty good run, isn't it?
Yeah, typically late February is when it's starting, and then March and April is when it peaks. So I would expect it to only get better and better in the next couple weeks. If you have the time and the weather permits, I'd definitely take full advantage of some great cobia fishing right now in Stuart.
Man, I haven't eaten a piece of cobia since yesterday. That stuff never gets old with me.
Yeah, and there's always plenty of it when you catch one.
Oh, here's what I want you to do, John Earhart. I want you to take that fillet of cobia, and I want you to get one of Captain Ricky's famous crab cakes, okay? I have to make you one up next time we see each other. And you put that cobia on the grill with that crab cake on it, and you cook it just until it gets a little crust on the crab cake. It'll make you leave home now, John.
That sounds pretty darn good, and I might just take you up on that.
Ooh, buddy, that would be my pleasure. Well, doggone it, we really appreciate the report. That was absolutely outstanding, and I hope the wind lays down so you guys can get offshore a little bit more, but thank God for the snook and tarpon biting, huh?
Yeah, so hopefully next week I'll be reporting some big mahis to you.
I'll be ready for that, too. Thank you so much, Cap.
Yep, thanks, Rick.
We appreciate it. Our thanks to Captain John Earhart for a great Stuart report. Now let's move on further south. Guys, I got to tell you, I've been excited about this all week. Now, Alan Sherman gives us a great report from Miami every week. Well, he's off on his second honeymoon, if you will. He's on a cruise. So filling in, we have got one of Florida's absolute true legends, and I'm so proud to call him a friend of mine, Captain Ray Rocher. Ray, how are you?
I'm doing good, Rick. Thank you for having me.
It's good to hear from you. Nobody knows Miami fishing like Ray Rocher does. How's it been this week?
It's actually been pretty good. I don't know if I can fill Alan Sherman's boots. They might be a couple sizes large for me, but
he's pretty tall dude.
I'll certainly try.
He's pretty tall dude.
Yeah, he is.
What have you heard from Inshore?
The tarpon are starting to show up in the cut. It is snook season. A few snook have been caught, especially around Government Cut. And there's been decent yellowtail fishing on the reef. We've really enjoyed better yellowtail fishing this season than we've seen in quite a few years. Not giant, but decent fish, mostly legal, up to maybe 2.5 pounds. The patch reefs have actually been pretty good too. There's, this time of the year is a wonderful time of the year for a great variety on the patches. We're catching mangroves and mutton, porgies and grunts and all that stuff too. But it's a wonderful time of the year, especially on a rough day. The patches sometimes can really pay off, especially if we have kids on the boat. But yellowtailing, honestly, that's been our kind of go-to on a day where, it's either kind of rough offshore, if we have north current offshore and it's rougher out in the current than it would be on the reef, we'll fish the reef. Yellowtailing, of course, is just such a great thing to do, especially when you have people who just enjoy action, especially kids and older kids like me.
That's got to almost feel like a day off for you guys. I mean, it's just so much fun, and anybody can do it, and everybody loves it, and then you all get to go home and eat good.
Yeah, and the cool thing on the yellowtails is that, it's a fish bowl. You start throwing the chum, and the next thing you know, there's yellowjacks and big cuda swims in, and then there's a shark, and maybe you put down a bottom rod. And the other day I was fishing Heidi Mason. You might remember her from years ago. She fished the Met tournament a lot.
I do.
And won master angler many times, and fished a lot of sailfish tournaments and won a lot. She fished mainly with the Dudas family. And anyway, she called me the other day and wanted to take her 8-year-old daughter. So we went out. Conditions were just really bad for sailfish. It was just no current to speak of, west wind, green water. And I said, well, let's start out. Julia's 8. Let's start out on the yellowtails and let's just get her acclimated to the tackle. This really was her first attempt at offshore fishing. And believe it or not, we, anchored up in 70 feet of water, got the chum going. Yellowtails came up, hooked a couple of yellowtails. And west wind, we snuck a kite out because now it's going offshore. And within 10 minutes, we had the sail on, and Julia caught it. So that's the other cool thing about yellowtailing is if you kind of multitask, you can get a lot of things going on. And kite fishing many times is good because once the yellowtails come up, the predators follow.
That's one of the great parts about Miami and the area that you get to fish. I've followed your career for a long time, and you can literally be anchored up with 8-pound test yellowtail fishing, and then all of a sudden somebody's got a sail on, or who knows what. In fact, speaking of that, I've known you long enough. I remember a great picture of you and your beautiful wife, Charmaine, with a giant mako.
That was really a special fish and a special night. We got chartered by a guy named Glenn Heitman, and Glenn was from the New England area and really liked, everything offshore, sharks, swords, and so on. And that particular night, we were sword fishing, and it was Father's Day. And last-minute trip, Glenn came in town. He had fished with us before, but he called me last minute, can you guys pull together a swordfish trip tonight? And, of course, a lot of my crew were busy with family obligations with their dads, and I understood. So the last person standing was Charmaine. I said, well, we should be able to do this together. She and I had fished a few swordfish tournaments on the Get Lit. And what do you expect on a night like that? Maybe a 100-pound sword, we'll manage. And Glenn was by himself, and it was just the three of us.
The famous question I always ask myself in that situation is, I'll take my wife. What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah. A 200-pound sword, but we'll still manage. So anyways, we go put the spread out and sitting there nice and quiet, calm night. Next thing you know, you get a bite on the deep line right below the boat. And the fish doesn't really do much. Just kind of comes up to the surface. We get all the lines cleared and get the fish close to the boat. And 20 minutes, we got the leader. And Charmaine grabs the leader, shine a light down there, and her eyes get giant. She turns around, she goes, it is an enormous mako. Now I got a problem. I got one angler and Charmaine and I. So we just basically finagled a way to get a dart in it on an 80. And remember, we got mono leader, we're sword fishing. So, we had mono leader on the shark, and the guy really wanted it. He wanted the meat and he wanted the jaws, and it was his first mako. So we decided to take the fish. She leaded him up, and I got a dart in him. And the craziest thing about makos is just how durable they are. I darted him in the gills, and that fish took off for probably 30 minutes. You'd think that fish would die in 5 minutes, 30 minutes later, came up, and it was still belly down somehow. I don't know how. But anyways, we eventually got it in the boat and got some cool pictures. And Glenn and I are still friends to this day, and we still talk about that shark. So that's the only one I ever killed, and he ate a lot of mako.
Oh man, that's some good eating too. Now I'm not kidding. That is, I would never eat a piece of swordfish over a piece of mako. I can promise you that. Ray, I just can't thank you enough. That was a great report, and I love the story about Charmaine and the mako. And I'm so glad to call you a friend, and I hope we get to talk again real soon.
I'm here anytime.
Hey, how can people get a trip on the Get Lit?
Our charter boat is missbrit.com, MISSBRITT.com, and my phone number is 305-788-3474.
Perfect. That's the Fish with Miss Brit Charters. It doesn't get any better than that. Yep. Thank you, Captain Ray.
All right.
Take care.
You. Take care.
Our thanks to Captain Ray Rocher for a great South Florida report. Ray and each one of our action spotters are brought to you every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, by Phoenix Rods, by Tournament Master Chum, and by Young Boats. You want the best in flat spay and offshore hybrid boats? Check out youngboats.com.
You know what Yamaha Outboards love? The genuine formula and consistency of Yamalube marine engine oils. Outboards are subjected to punishing conditions like high loads, salt, and humidity, a mix that automotive oils can't handle. Yamalube full synthetic and marine performance formulas are certified to protect against friction and corrosion for reliable performance every time. Find Yamalube marine oils at your nearest Yamaha Outboard dealer. Locate them at yamahaaoutboards.com/dealers. Yamaha. Reliability starts here.
Hey, Raj, being consistent is the mark of a quality product. If you've been Florida's #1 chum for over 10 years, there's got to be a reason.
That's right. For 10 years, Tournament Master Chum has lived up to his name. That's why more tournament pros insist on Tournament Master than any other chum. It's the only chum with menhaden milk mixed right in. That means it gets the scent out faster and deeper than any other brand of chum. It comes in a grind size for every species from kingfish to catching bait. Your fishing time is way too precious to use second-rate chum. Bring the action to you by insisting on Tournament Master Chum. It's worth every penny.
When you're ready for the finest in custom-made flat spay or inshore offshore hybrids, you are ready to meet the Young family in Inglis, Florida. For over 21 years, the Young family has built custom boats one at a time for every type of fishing. Nothing can sneak up on a flat quite like the Gulf Shore flats boats, and I've never fished a better hybrid than the Young 24s and 27s. Rob Young is a naval architect who takes tremendous pride in each and every build for each and every customer that wants their boat custom built exactly the way they want it. Is it time for you to move up? Are you ready to own a boat that's built for your family to enjoy for decades? Then you need to visit the Young Boat facility in Inglis, Florida, or check them out online at youngboats.com. Now, here's a trip I've been looking forward to taking. Let me tell you, the Sport Fishing Center of the United States. Everybody that has been to Florida knows about Bud and Mary's Marina, and everybody just, if you've been to Bud and Mary's Marina, or if you've seen them on Instagram or Facebook, you know the name Nick Stancic. What a big thrill it is for me to be able to get our report from Nick tonight. How are you?
We're doing all right. Thanks for having me.
Man, I'm more than happy to have you. Tell me what's going on at Bud and Mary's. What's biting on the inshore? The flat sky's doing it?
It's been a little windy. This winter has been windy, but last week with that warm weather, my brother got in on the tarpon action. He had one day at 4 tarpon and missed a couple, and some of those fish are big, some over 100 pounds. And then his last couple trips, he had 1 tarpon, missed a couple, then some snook and redfish. I think there's another cold front coming here in the next few days that's probably going to shut those tarpon down again. But there's been plenty of action back there, snappers, jacks, snook and reds along the island, and then some tarpon out in the bays too.
Well, I got to ask you something. Would you do me a favor and run outside real quick and look and see if that big Freeman of yours is glowing in the dark? I've seen so many Instagram pictures lately. That boat's on fire.
We've had a good couple months here since the new year started.
How big was the big sword?
Last year in March, the end of March, we got that 757. And then this year so far in January, we had one that was 382 pounds. My last trip a few days ago, we had a 180-pounder with Robert from Deer Meat for Dinner. He's a YouTube celebrity. And we had a killer day with him. We got a big swordfish, and then we had a couple queen snapper and like a huge snowy grouper. So we've been having some good trips.
Nick, those were some beautiful queens. Do you average them that big around Islamorada?
Now, we don't catch the numbers here like they do in the Bahamas, but we're fortunate that our fish do average about 8 to 15 pounds. And in reality, we're hoping to catch a handful. You know, people have 3 or 4, that's good. We're not out there trying to catch 20 of them. We are lucky that we do catch some nice ones. And we were actually hand cranking them in deep water, 800 feet of water with 30-pound braid and a little high-speed reel. So we did a couple of those, and it was pretty fun. Nice change of pace from the electric and the heavy lead.
Yeah, I bet you they're ready to push that button again after they hand crank a couple of times.
Yeah, it was good for the show, for his YouTube episode there with Deer Meat for Dinner. But after we caught a couple, we switched gears.
That's absolutely fantastic. Now, I've got to ask you a question that's been on my mind a long time, ever since I saw your monster there. Do you think you've hooked one bigger?
I remember a lot of the big ones like have caught sword fishing, but unfortunately the ones you lose are the ones that hunt you. That's your nightmare job.
Yes, sir.
Never forget. Easter Sunday, April 8th, 10 years ago, we hooked a giant that we caught 4.5 hours. And I've never seen one do what that fish did, go up and down to the bottom 4 times, scoping out. The line was like a clothesline, 1,500 feet of line out, in the chair with 3 anglers cranking on it. They'd never been deep sea fishing like that before. And after 4.5 hours, unfortunately, broke the line. That was one that could have gave that 750 a run for his money. Never got a good look at him, though. And, I don't know if it was 6 or 7, or if it was 8 or 9, who knows. Springtime's coming, and that's when I've seen some of the giants.
Now, are you pretty much exclusively daytime fishing now? You've almost revolutionized sword fishing down at Bud and Mary's. How many of your trips are in the daytime now?
My charter business has done very well the last few years. Social media has been great for that. A lot of people get to see what we're catching on a daily basis, and I became known for sword fishing. And it's definitely a niche, but almost 90 or 95% of my trips now this past year and a half have been sword fishing. We're usually about half of that, but now if I get booked for a trip, most people want to go try for swordfish.
Well, buddy, I tell you what, you have got it figured out. And the reason that I asked you that question about if you hooked a bigger one, the one that'll haunt me forever was 1979, long before you were born. And we had one of the old 12-aught black Senators full of Dacron. And Nick, the bite was gentle. We almost didn't see it. And I walked back, and that fish took off. And I stuck him, and I never should have bothered to put the reel in gear. It didn't make any difference. That 12-aught was strung out and gone before you knew it.
I believe it. There was definitely some giants around back then, and luckily we got some good tackle and braid to get the line capacity now. But like you said, you don't forget those big ones that get away.
Oh, that's the ones that stay with you. There's no question about it. Now, has there been much to your sailfish bite yet this winter?
It's been spotty, it'll be decent for a week or two and it slows down. It has been a little tough the last 2 weeks. A few boats fished today. So Relentless had one. My uncle at Catch 22 had one. One other boat had one, but it has been a little tough, a little hit and miss. And the last week has been slower than we'd like to see. Still a few around, but not as good as last year.
Well, Nick, you and your family have completely just made Bud and Mary's even greater than it's been back in the history of that place, and it is absolutely the epicenter of sport fishing, not only in the Keys, but probably in the southeast United States. Tell somebody how they can book a charter with Nick Stancic or any of your family down at Bud and Mary's.
If you want to check out the website for Bud and Mary's, there's a bunch of great guys there, 50 captains between backcountry and offshore. But either at budandmarys.com, you can go check the boats out and call the marine office at 305-664-2461. All the trips to the marina are booked over the phone. We don't have an online booking system yet. And I've got a waiting list myself to go fishing. Fortunately, I've been booked out about 6 to 8 months in advance. My website is daytimeswordfish.com. So if anybody wants to go sword fishing, send me an email request on there, and we'll get you on the waiting list.
Nick, congratulations on your success, son. I've watched you since you were a young kid through social media, like you say, and through the magazines. I'm proud for you, and I look forward to talking with you again very soon.
I appreciate it, Rick. Thanks for having me on there. We'll talk next time.
Thank you, Nick. That was Nick Stancic, none other than Nick himself from Bud and Mary's. He is one of the preeminent swordfish fishermen in the world, and it's just incredible to me the fish that he is stacking up down there. Okay, doggone it, we've gone about as far south as we can go. It is time to head on around the corner of the state and make a stop in 10,000 Islands, and we're going to talk with our buddy Steve Dahl. Steve, how are you?
I'm doing quite well, Rick. How you doing this week?
I'm doing fine. I missed a fish today. I wouldn't have missed him if I'd have had a Phoenix rod. That's the only reason I missed him.
I like to tell myself the same, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way.
Yeah, well, see, I've got something to blame it on. You don't. You fishing Phoenix rods.
Yeah, I do. I love them. They've been near and dear to my heart for a while. So.
Well, tell me what's going on in 10,000 Islands.
Well, we're playing weatherman again. I mean, that's I think the whole darn state is. We've got a really weird weather pattern. We're looking to kind of have some pretty blustery conditions this whole week, and it's going to kind of keep a few guys at the dock, especially the offshore guys, leading up to this. It was darn real good. I mean, classic pre-front fishing, and that barometer is moving, and you can kind of, a lot about being an outdoorsman just in general is being, kind of being a weatherman. And you really need to be a little bit conscious of when some of these fronts are moving through, because if you can get out on the front end of these things, the fish are moving and they're cooperative. 9 out of 10 times, if you're fishing before the front, you're certainly going to be able to get them. And that was absolutely the case prior to Sunday. We had 3-4 straight days of kind of slicked out conditions, inshore, nearshore, offshore, everything was biting. I don't know a better way to tell. Maybe the highlights have definitely been the red grouper. Red grouper have been about as consistent as we've ever had in the 10,000 Islands region. 85 to 100 feet of water is really your mark, and they're not on anything big. It's all been on tiny little subtle ledges, 2 to 3 foot ledges. I mean, that's all it is. And you're going to need to really, if you're not really honed into your, GPS or, fish finder skills, you may want to take, in this day and age, you can find pretty much anything online, take your brand, figure out how to kind of hone that in and be able to understand and recognize what it is you're actually looking for. And I think a lot of people just don't know, and that's okay. But interpreting what is on your bottom machine relative to what is holding fish is extremely important. And when I mean subtle, they're 2 to 3 foot ledges, and it doesn't look like much, but they're holding fish, and it's loaded. So you got to really, really kind of hone in your skills of trying to find that, how to set up on it. But when you do, it's gangbusters. Guys are winning out really fast. All been on cut bait, real simple stuff. You're not even needing pilchards or pinfish. It's all been on cut thread fin herring. It just seems like if you find those wedges, you're going to get bit. So that's kind of the offshore side. The inshore side has been kind of lights out. We've had this warmer water. Back areas are kind of in the mid to upper 70-degree water temps.
Wow.
And I can't believe I'm saying that. But, I had one little tiny creek where we probably caught 30, 40 snook, and it was 77 degrees in there.
Wow.
And it's February.
It's February, yes. And, Steve, I gotta go back to your fish finder conversation for just a minute, because I want to tell you a little bit about where I live. Up in Northeast Florida, we're pretty much the epicenter of red snapper. I mean, we've got so many, it's beyond comprehension. And I have seen myself go 180 degrees over the last 12, 14 years. And whereas we used to just love to pull up on ledge, oh my goodness, look at the fish. Oh my gosh. Oh, look at the fish. This is going to be fantastic. Now, I will not stop there. The minute that big show of fish shows up, I'm going somewhere else. Steve, give me that fat bottom line, which tells me that the bottom is hard, and give me that little bit of fuzz on top of it. And that's what we're looking for.
That's exactly it. Even on our near shore bites, and I'll we'll kind of get into that, because the near shore bite is just the same for us. And I'm talking, water 20 to 40 feet, several miles offshore, all within kind of 9 miles, all kind of state water stuff. This time of year, we have so much of that bait kind of show up offshore, and you kind of go over some of these little wrecks and reefs, and you see these big clouds, and your first instinct is what? We're going to crush it. That could be 10,000 pinfish down.
That's
and you'll quickly figure that out. It could be small blue runners. There could be a whole host of things. So time on the water, I always say no, there's no substitute for time on the water, and you'll experience those things. But do not discredit these little subtleties and understanding what that is. And we see it on the near shore side too. So for the guys that don't want to make the big runs or have the smaller boats, take some time, even these public numbers, go over them, several times with your boat and try to understand what it is you're looking for, and you'll be pleasantly surprised, because a lot of people will just drive right over it. So.
Bingo. And they need to learn. You're exactly right. I got to tell you this. I'm going to bust wide open if I don't tell somebody. I stopped on a little fuzzball the other day. I mean, the tiniest thing you ever saw. We caught 3 sea bass. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
2 3s and a 4 3/4 pounder. Is that good ones?
Yeah, I mean, those are giants.
Yep. That was cool. That was cool.
Yeah, and this is what, I think a lot of people just see that and they think it's, bait fish or just a live bottom or, whatever it may be. But I think, you've really got to try to drop on that stuff. And here we're talking about the geo area spanning from your neck of the woods up in the northeast all the way down to the southwest and far south of the state. So these are commonalities all throughout the state. So it's not like, it's a regional specific thing that we're talking about here.
Got it. All right. Hey, listen, we can't thank you enough, Steve Dahl. Thanks so much for your report, and we look forward to talking to you next week.
Sounds good, Rick. You have a great week.
Thank you, bud.
Take care.
Steve, of course, is brought to you each and every week by Phoenix Rods. Phoenix Rods offers nearly 400 different models of rods for every species of fish. They're known for their innovative design. They've got the best components and proprietary blanks. Phoenix Rods is the choice of passionate fishermen who take their fishing rods seriously. The M1 Inshore lineup has you covered from snook to redfish to tarpon with 16 different models for your backcountry application. The Black Diamond East Coast Series offered 12 different models for the offshore fishermen that are specifically designed for the Florida offshore angler. Check them out today at www.phoenixrods.com. That's PHENIX rods.com, or visit your local dealer here in Florida. Thank you, Captain Steve Dahl. Now let's swing a little bit further around and talk with our buddy Greg Stamper with Snook Stamp Charters. Greg, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
I'm doing fine. Hey, has this been a wild weather spring? I mean, is this the craziest thing you've ever seen?
Yeah, I remember last February we had a real warm February, and then March was freezing. I'm hoping that we don't reproduce that same thing, but the wind just keeps howling, and we get the tail ends of fronts blowing through us. But hasn't really slowed down the fishing too much in our neck of the woods, so I'm not complaining.
Good. Talk to me. What's happening inshore?
All right. So the best thing I can say right now is that just today alone, the Pompano showed up full speed. So we're ready to do that now. Next month or two should be fantastic for the Pompano, as long as we don't get real hard winds, because these fish have all been out front that we caught today and yesterday, really. But if we can get some calm days, which probably won't happen this week, but when they do, it's going to be fantastic. Now, the good part is if it's northeast winds, we can hit our passes and our beach lines and go after the same pompano without too much wave action, because it will buffer it due to the land slowing it all down. Going into the very back, we've got a lot of redfish. Redfish fishing has been fantastic.
had a lot of milky water because we've had a lot of low tides combined with a lot of wind, but cut baits like the ladyfish and the cut mullet have been fantastic. They're picking up shrimp as well. And if you can get yourself some good whitebait, I'm sure they'll go after that, but I really haven't used it. The snook, I've caught quite a few snook this week. Surprisingly, even with the drop in the water temperature, we've really gotten into some big fish. And it's really good to see because the backcountry slams, I know myself and several other guys all week long were able to produce backcountry slams for lots of clients almost every single day we were out there, which is fantastic.
Boy, it sure is. I got to ask you a question. It just came to me because we hear redfish from everybody from Alamorada up to Jacksonville. Do you remember a 12-month period that we've seen more redfish?
You know, we had a lot of rat reds last year in this area, Rick.
Right.
And that was the beginning of them, you know, because they had closed it down, which we had to, and we started seeing a lot of small fish. Now this year, those fish are probably 25 inches, and we're getting some fish that are over slot, which are coming in somewhere else. They didn't start here. Those fish are 3 years old. So they've moved in on top of all the other bait that's here. It's been fantastic for most of the year. There are times when they disappear for a few days here and there, but I think that's like that anywhere.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. But I think day in, day out, golly, and just all around the state, I've seen times when Indian River Lagoon was better or maybe Northeast Florida was better, but everybody you talk to this year talks about how many redfish there are and how they moved in, and I keep thinking, well, wait a minute, they haven't left anywhere. Where are they moving in from?
No, they're just growing and getting bigger. Really good water quality this year, and the bait situation has been fantastic. I mean, today alone, I was out there, and I mean, if I stopped every time I saw birds diving, I would have had to stop every 100 yards. It was great.
Great, that's absolutely great. Now, Steve Dahl was talking about how easy the red grouper fishing's been. How's it been for you?
A few of the guys that I talked to this week, and a few of them that I did see when they got back later in the evening because they did some offshore trips, did real well. The good part for them, they said, was fantastic. They only had to go out to 95 feet, so instead of going 40 miles, they only had to go 36 miles to get those red grouper, which is fantastic for them, save a little fuel. But on the inside of that, in 75, 80 feet of water, they are still flat out wrecking the mangrove snappers. And if you want porgies, it's ridiculous right now. These guys are still crushing them. I mean, I'm getting sick and tired of them asking me if I want some porgy meat.
That's not a bad thing, Cap. Those big jolt heads seem awfully good.
I know. I just had to throw that in there since you were bragging last week about your cobia and your snap.
No, I wouldn't do that. Don't start that rumor.
Now, to finish off the middle of that, the guys who have been going out not far, we're talking about nearshore fishing. Some of you guys on the East Coast would probably call it inshore fishing, but for us, it's nearshore. These guys are only going out a few miles. They're going south. They're going north of us. And they're fishing a lot of the rock piles and stuff anywhere from 25 to 35, 40 feet of water. Absolutely been slaying the big sheep's head, and the kingfish fight has been just in fuego. One of my captains at the marina was just talking yesterday, as a matter of fact. They were catching mackerel for fun because the guys just wanted to have action. And as they were reeling in these mackerel, they would have 2 or 3 kingfish following the mackerel in to eat them. So
how about that?
Kingfishing's been on point.
Great. And I got to tell you, almost everybody we talk to comments on how many juvenile kingfish are seeing too, which gives us even more hope for the future.
Yep. No, absolutely. It's been all good. Yeah. Other than that, I'm just going to be busy all week again, and I'll be talking to you next week, probably giving you something very similar because the wind's not going to die down, but it didn't really hurt us this week.
Outstanding. Well, I can't wait till next week, Greg, and we'll talk about it again. Thank you, buddy.
Tight lines, Rick.
Tight lines. Our thanks to Greg Stamper and all of our action spotters. Greg, of course, was brought to you this week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Tournament Master Chum. By Nosara Paradise Rentals. By Phoenix Rods. And by Young Boats. You want the best in flat span offshore boats? You need to check out youngboats.com. Let's come on up the West Central. We're headed down the road, and we'll check in with our buddy Ray Markham. Raymond, how you doing?
I am absolutely terrific.
Good deal. Good deal. How's fishing been this week?
Well, when we can get out, it's been pretty decent. So there's some stirred up water conditions from all the wind and and whatnot. The water temperature dropped a good chunk since last week, but other than that, fish are still hanging around. They're just not quite as willing as they were last week to eat since the water temperature dropped and got a little bit muddied up. But other than that, they're doing pretty well. We've got pretty good action with redfish still. Few guys are doing okay with trout. Still not hearing any really great reports with trout. Still, a lot of the rivers and creeks and whatnot are holding quite a few sheep's head as well as snook. So the guys that are taking a multitude of different kinds of baits out are doing really well. They're taking killifish and shrimp and sand fleas and fiddler crabs and they just everything they could possibly fit in the live well or in a bait tank to take out with them. They're doing it. They're catching a pretty good variety of fish. Guys that are not really able to get offshore because it was been a little too breezy offshore most of the time have been able to get in nearshore waters. When the water wasn't stirred up, they were catching Spanish mackerel and a few kingfish. A lot of guys are working the beaches and the swim buoys and whatnot for triple tail, so they've had a pretty good week with triple tail as well. But the guys that I talked to that are doing half-day trips, just, nearshore waters out to about 10, 12 miles, they're still doing pretty well with hogfish, and they're running anywhere, I guess, starting at about 40 feet of water and running out to about 90. So overall, for the kind of weird weather we're having with 85 degrees one day and 45 or 50 the next, it's been pretty doggone good.
That's way cool. I tell you what, I'm so glad to hear him still doing well with hogfish. I was worried when so many people started doing it that would burn them out, but it seems like they're hanging in there. So that's really good.
So far, so good.
Ray, we appreciate the heck out of it. Please make the wind stop blowing so we can talk more next week, will you?
I will do that. Next week, maybe we'll talk a little more about cobia, too, because there's some changes coming on those.
All right, Ray, as always, we appreciate it. We'll look forward to talking to you next week.
Captain Ricky, we'll talk to you, buddy.
All right, buddy. Thank you, Ray.
Catch you later.
Okay, let's leave the West Central area and head up to where you kind of turn left. You start into that Big Bend and talk with the mayor of Homosassa, Florida, William Toney. William, are you there?
I'm right here, Rick, downtown Homosassa.
Okay, how's traffic tonight?
Not too bad. In fact, we've had our first warm day here in about a 3-day period. Big tides today, finally. We had a lot of moonscape a couple of days ago, all weekend long. Super negative low tides. But now we got water. Everybody's happy, but it's about to go south again.
You said the word moonscape, and that's the reason why we had low tides. Explain how that works, William.
All right. Well, here it is. And this is on the Big Bend. This is a real quick, how it works. We had we had our new moon on Saturday. And what happened, whenever you're on this side of the coast of Florida, you got a big front to come through, and you get about 3 days of northeast winds at 20 to 25 knots. You can pretty much guarantee that Mexico has a high tide. The Big Bend of Florida has no water at all. And it takes a little bit for it to come back. And the first day that those winds stop or calm down, you'll get a little water. But then again, with this next approaching front coming in, we get a heavy pull from the south and southwest. And it was hitting about 12, 14 knots a day. Pushed in a lot of water, made for a great bite. Of course, that coincides ahead of a front. We may get one more good bite tomorrow. But then we're looking at another front that's supposed to come on in and be pretty chilly all the way through Saturday here on the Big Bend.
I've heard that, and let me tell you, you and I live at opposite ends of the world, because when we get a northeast wind, it pushes ocean water way up the river. Captain David Boies was telling us tonight that he could sight fish in places he's never been able to sight fish before, because we get the clear water when we get the northeast wind. Now, when we get the west wind, we get the same effect you get from northeast, of course.
Negative.
All of our creeks drain out. All of our flats go dry. It's just like we're running, like somebody pulled the plug, William. We're running out of water.
Absolutely. You know what? That's kind of the cool thing about being in Florida. Well, being on a peninsula, that wind has a huge effect on the way tides and everything. And people ask us, like, well, high tide was at 4 o'clock today, and It never really came in. I'm like, well, it just won't. That wind is predominant on it. You know, the only time it really doesn't matter on a wind shift would be June through about October, and you can pretty much rely on a high incoming tide. But when you get into our winter months, and it's the last little blow of winter, we're still, you know, in February, you're going to experience some of those negative tides. And in fact, all the way into March, my grandfather used to call them, we get a northwester. The northwester was a pretty blustery wind. It kind of like swept the water in a bit, like wrings it right back out and then muddies everything up. One thing, you get that northeast wind, it will blow the water out, but keep it clear. And, you know, you'll get out there and experience some pretty chilly days. You just have to tuck and hide if you want to catch some fish.
That's cool. That's really interesting. I love the way and you're able to go back on generations before you and lean on their knowledge and what happened. I have always felt like the northwest. I'm more scared of a northwest wind, William, than any wind there is, because for us, the Gulf Stream is flowing north. So if you get 12 knots of a north wind and 3 knots of a north current, you're going to be a hurting puppy. It's going to stack up pretty tight on you. But I hate to be the one to break this to you. I wasn't going to tell you, but I'm going to have to tell you. I sat in on a meeting of the Homosassa City Council the other night, and they're talking.
Oh no!
Yep, they're throwing you out. Okay.
Oh, great! You know, I knew I should have got that better bottle of booze.
You and your family.
I should have done it.
You and your family have to move. Listen to me now. You have to move 500 miles away at least to set up a fishery in a whole new area. Where are you going?
Oh, wow. Oh, shoot, man. You know what? Right when I graduated high school, you know, always you get wanderlust. You want to leave everything that you grew up and knew it sucked. That's what I always thought.
Right.
So I spent a couple years on the Outer Banks of North Carolina in Kill Devil Hills.
Ooh.
So I would have to trek out there, and I'd have to become a Tar Heel guy out there in North Carolina. Loved it. Ate some good oysters, caught trout, caught big redfish, caught some kingfish. Never did get to go out of Oregon Inlet. Didn't get into that part of it. But, you know, I always have to say, once you realize where you came from is the best, I did move back, and I'm in love with my hometown. But I would have to say, if I had to move 500 miles, I hope that covers it, because I would like to be back in Kill Devil Hills, Ocracoke, Rodin, anywhere out there, even up at Duck or Corolla. I always enjoyed that area. It's beautiful, got a great fishery, and it's just gorgeous part of America.
Oh, Cap, I have got to fish in that Outer Banks fishery, and I loved it. I'll meet you up there, except I made up the whole story, William. There wasn't any city council. I mean, they're not throwing
all
you
right.
out, so
yeah, I thought I was in trouble. You know, maybe they was tonight. I didn't show up or something. I don't know.
you relax and stay right where you are. Homosassa wouldn't be the same without you. Cap, we appreciate your report so much. Real quick, before you go, have you heard much from further offshore?
Now, further offshore, we still have a great mangrove snapper bite, starting anywhere from about 20 to 30 foot. Big thing is making sure the weather and everything is conducive to running out. It's about 22 miles. But the mangrove snappers, catching them anywhere from 15 for the minimum up to a couple of them been coming in. I've heard of one 26 inches. So good bite on that. A few hogfish, some sheep's head, and also a lot of grunts. So there's action out there. Just got to play the weather.
Oh, yeah. That's always a gamble this time of year. It's like I always say, in the summertime, you can check the weather once a week. In the wintertime, you can check it once an hour.
Absolutely.
We look forward to talking to you next week. And, oh, by the way, in Homosassa, where you belong.
Yeah, right here in downtown Homosassa, my friend.
You got it. Our thanks to William Toney for a great Big Bend report. I made that whole story up. They're not going to run him out of town ever, I promise you. But let's come on around a little further out toward the Panhandle and talk with our buddy Kevin Lanier. Kevin, how are you?
Hey, Captain Rick, doing good. How are you?
Good. First off, I want to hear about the gumbo thing. How did that go?
Well, the Gumbo Festival was a huge success in Mexico Beach. We had estimates of anywhere between 800 and 1,000 people that showed up to support Mexico Beach. We had a blast. The gumbo and the Brunswick stew was phenomenal. And believe it or not, Team KC Sport Fishing finished second in the gumbo portion of the contest. So we were just as pleased as could be.
Well, I wouldn't know how good your gumbo is. I've never had it.
Well, I'm sorry about that. We ran out with probably another hour to go in the whole festival. I was offering pieces of bread from those of you from the South would be able to sop the pot.
You can't beat that, Cap. There ain't nothing better than sopping a gumbo pot, is there?
Oh, absolutely not. It was a fantastic time. Everybody was just there. The mood was great. They had a lot of future plans for Mexico Beach on display at the festival. So it was a great time had by all.
Cool. That's fantastic. Well, now let's get to something we know a little bit about. Tell me about inshore fishing in your area.
Well, inshore fishing is about the same. There hasn't been a lot of success going on around the area. Hear of a redfish now and then taking some speckled trout. But the really neat thing is they're starting to pick up Spanish mackerel close to the beach. So people are starting to get excited. We're talking way early, but they're seem to be showing up right now. So it's got a lot of the local people really excited, and the flounder are here too. So we're having a good time inshore.
Hold on. Did I fall asleep or something? Is it still February?
It is still February. It's not the first time we've had Spanish show up in February.
Okay.
It is funny, but you know what'll happen? I know what's going to happen is we're all going to get ready for that spring Spanish, and then I'm going to be here.
They're going to already be gone.
Early.
Yep. How's the size on the Spanish?
They're typical, anywhere from just legal 12 inches up to probably about 6 inches. Nothing of any size. We caught Spanish when we were down at the Keys a few weeks ago. That would have been the small kings here. So the Spanish are just a little right now, which is typical for the beginning of the run.
I see. All right, but the numbers are good?
They're okay. I mean, it's spotty because it's just starting. The mackerel trees are the thing to use with one of my favorite lures is a new one that I actually brought with me from the Pacific Northwest. It's made by a company called Silver Horde, and it's called a Coho Killer. And it's a little bent lure, and I tell you what, I put it up against anything traditionally used for Spanish being trolled.
Be careful now, because I'll pull a mackerel tree. I mean, that's pretty deadly.
Oh, it is. I'll put a mackerel tree and I'll put that little spoon on the back side of it. And I tell you what, you can't keep them off of there. It's just amazing sometimes.
Well, that's way cool. That's fantastic. I'll have to talk to you more about that. What about bottom fishing?
Yep.
Anything going on bottom fishing wise?
Just like it has been for the guys that can get out, the vermilions are all over the place. Those rumored red snapper and triggerfish, they keep showing up in spite of what we hear. But, there's bottom fish to be had. I mean, you get out there and you can, on a good day, you put your time in, you're going to get a boatload of bottom fish. There's no reason why you can't go out and limit on bottom fish. We use a traditional chicken rig with little small pieces of squid. You can catch all you want as long as you, have a good idea where to go.
Now, I got to ask you this. If I read things right, they are reallocating the Gulf stock to where the states are going to handle, the quota's not going to change. The total allowable catch will be the same, but the states are going to handle how they manage the recreational catch in the Gulf. Is that true?
That is correct. We're not going to have a difference in a state and a fed season as far as recreational goes. The state is now authorized. And from what I understand, that's now, it went from a test to that's now how we're going to conduct business, where the state will set the season for both state and federal waters as far as recreational fishermen go, and the for hire non-federal charters will all be managed directly by the state.
Okay, let me ask you a question, Kevin Lanier. You got the same number of pounds of fish to deal with, the same number of head. How would you manage them?
Oh, good Lord. First off, I'd eliminate the difference between federal and state charters and everybody. Hey, we're all recreational.
You're correct. I agree 100%.
If I have a recreational quota, I split the quotas between the commercial and the rec, and we determine our days. I think we're getting better because one of the reasons that I believe that they can manage the federal charters the way they do is because they can tell you exactly how many fish that they can take on any given season. Because you have a six-pack, you have whatever. So they can get a pretty good worst-case estimate on those fish. We just need to find a better way to manage on the recreational side. And I think these guys that are doing the reef surveys, and I can't tell you how important it is to turn in the information every year. That's why we got more days in the fall this past year. If guys will keep doing that and be really religious about doing that, I believe we're going to see a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more quota each year. I think that's a positive. I mean, some people think, well, Big Brother's watching. Well, if it takes Big Brother watching to get us more days on the water, then I think that's what we need to do.
Bingo. I got to tell you, nobody hates big government more than I do. But I am of the opinion that if mandatory reporting is necessary for us to stabilize this red snapper situation and get us more days on the fish, I will turn in every fish I ever catch.
I agree with you, Rick. I mean, the problem is we've been doing it by Ouija board and throwing spaghetti against the wall for way too long. If we can write down numbers and make phone calls with these apps now that are available on our smartphones, if we can start reporting and be good about it and, support that process, I think it will pay dividends for us in the long run. Might be a pain now, but I think it's going to help us in the long run.
Brother, I couldn't agree with you more. That's fantastic. Anything more important we need to know on the fishing report scene?
The sheepshead, they're still not here like they normally are, but I think a lot of our inshore reefs here on the northwest side of the area, we're knocked out in shallow water, so you're going to have to look a little bit different for sheepshead spots. But I think we're going to start to see that slowly improvement of the fishery over the next few weeks and months, as typical as this time of year.
Well, you can write this down. Here's my prediction: the full moon in March, when we're working up to it the week before it, you're going to see the sheepshead like they're supposed to be.
I think you're right. I had an old timer here tell me the first time we have 5 days in a row of fog in the morning will be the day after that the Spanish show up.
How about that? That's one I'd never heard.
5 straight days of fog, the Spanish will be here.
That is way cool. That is way cool. I'd love to know where that got started. Cap, we appreciate it so much. I look forward to talking with you next week.
Hey, Captain Rick, look forward to talking to you as always.
See you then, buddy. Our thanks to Captain Kevin Lanier for an outstanding Northwest report. Whoa, we can't leave Florida until we've been all the way out to the edge of the Panhandle and checked in with the mayor of Lower Alabama, Chaz Heller. Chaz, how are you?
Doing great, Rick.
Good. Glad to hear it. Tell me about fishing in Lower Alabama.
Starting to get good. Water's clearing up, which means it's probably going to get dirty again here soon from all the rain up north. But it's getting good. Everybody's getting excited. We're getting a lot of rain coming through and there's warm spells. So people have been hitting the water for sure.
Chaz, what is the biggest contributor to you guys getting dirty water there? Is it rain, or is it a west wind, or what is it?
It really has to do with the rain and snow melt from this past winter, from about Arkansas and north. So, right now they're talking about the Mississippi's going to flood record numbers. And I think they say that every year. But usually that's not a good sign. That means that dirty water is going to push out in Mississippi and we get that hard west current.
Right.
And it just depends on how fast that current's moving. And right now it's moving pretty good. We could see that dirty water in couple of months. We could see it, in a month. It just depends. That definitely impacts fishing.
It pours out of your rivers and messes up the Gulf. Is that how you get it?
Yeah, the local water that comes out of the local rivers and bays, it will impact us a little bit, but once you get 3 to 4 or 5 miles out in the Gulf, it usually dissipates. The water that I'm talking about really has to do with coming out of the Mississippi River.
That's what I thought.
Way over there in Louisiana and pushing over. I mean, we typical on good years. Right now, the water is, we're called the Emerald Coast for a reason. It is as emerald green and clear as you could ever want it. And it sometimes will last into May and then get dirty for a while. Sometimes it'll get dirty in the end of March. So it really just depends. It impacts our early season fishing.
How's fishing?
Been really good. Pompano are going to show up a little bit. Whiting have really pushed through in good numbers. So all those guys spending the time on the beach earlier getting a little bit of payoff. The trout are still in the canals and creeks and bayous. They don't really know if they need to start moving to the flats or stay where it is, where it's consistent and warm. But
the fishing's been good. Offshore, vermilion snapper fishing's been good, but we're now starting to see that transition of red snapper and triggerfish moving in on those spots and kind of being cumbersome. So,
are your triggerfish open now, or are they still closed?
They're still closed.
How long? When do they
open? I believe it's March 1st, but I could be wrong.
Okay. Well, that's not very far off, so that's a good thing.
Not far off, no. But the juvenile red snapper make it a little frustrating too. The key right now is getting out there a little bit deeper on those bigger wrecks or natural live bottom areas and putting a lot of baits in the water, downsizing leaders, and those bigger vermilion will bite.
Kyle, I was 62 miles off of Jacksonville the other day, just inshore of the continental shelf, and dropped down and got covered up with 6 to 8 inch red snapper. Cap, it's gonna get worse when they grow up.
Yeah. Well, it's good signs to come. Maybe you just caught a pod in transition. I don't know, but hopefully it becomes so crazy that they have to change the regulations. It's really good over here. I can say that.
Oh well.
Early stuff, and commercial guys I know that are out there fishing, just trying to find the right size fish. They're complaining they're either way too small or all way too big. It is a good problem to have, I think.
Yeah, I think the population is certainly solid now, and it's just learning how to manage it sustainably. Right now, it's not sustainable. If we let them continue to take over our reefs like they are right now, that's all we're going to have pretty soon.
Yep, it's going to be an interesting ride over the next 10 years, especially with lionfish. Everybody was on this big kick to, get rid of lionfish. Once they have a population like they have, you're not getting rid of them. Now we just have to figure out some other way, or, luckily some of the fish are figuring out that they can eat them. I've been faked out more by lionfish marking on the bottom than anything else when it comes to looking for vermilion snapper, and it's hard to get them to bite a hook.
Really? Now that's shocking to me, because we've got numbers over here in where I live in Northeast Florida, but nothing like that. Nothing like you would mistake for.
Well, especially on those shallower wrecks, they show up in such big numbers. They'll be all puffed up and up current and looking just like a ball of vermilion, thinking you found that early school and nothing. And you'll talk to a diver or somebody else who has been there that day, and that's what they tell you. Yeah, that place is just covered up. I don't think it affects the other fish being there. I don't think they're keeping the other fish away, but it's definitely fooling me every now and then.
Yeah, and you said something earlier about other fish eating them. I did cut open a sea bass this year that had a lionfish inside of him, so they do get eaten on occasion. But I got to tell you, with the commercial price of lionfish being what it is, I'm surprised that we're not putting a dent in them. Gosh, I know a couple of commercial snapper boats that have turned into commercial lionfish boats.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe that's what the future's going to hold. You never know. It's going to be a crazy ride for the next few years, but hopefully I think it's all good stuff. I think we paid our dues the last 10 years.
Well, keep in mind, if we listen to my producer, I'm not going to be around to see the future anyway, so it won't make any difference to me. Chaz,
keep rolling the dice, Rick.
It's always a pleasure. It is. If I make it to tomorrow morning and next week, I'll talk with you next week, all right?
Yeah, awesome. Sounds good.
Thank you, buddy. Captain Chaz Heller from out in the Panhandle. And that wraps up our trip around the state tonight. Gosh, it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of good reports. David Boies was talking about how in Northeast Florida, the red fishing has just been so fantastic. We're not even going to talk about redfish anymore in this report, because it's just been the best year that Florida's seen, and the kind of regulations we've got in place means it's probably going to stay that way. I'm thankful to see it. Cobia have shown up. They're 20 miles off the beach in St. Augustine. They are real thick down around Stuart. We got good reports down in that area. Coming down south a little bit further, there's kind of a fair sailfish bite going on. The sailfish bite just really hadn't been very exciting this year. Been an awful lot of wind that kept boats off the water, but the inshore fishing's been tremendous. The mangrove, the yellowtails. What a great report from Captain Ray Rocher about how much he loves yellowtail fishing. He's fished more than all of us. If he loves it, it's okay for me to love it. We had a great trip coming up the West Coast where Steve Dahl reported that the redfish have stayed very good, and the red grouper are easy pickings off 10,000 Islands right now. You work up the West Coast a little bit. Ray Markham talked about how they're catching kingfish in February. That's almost unheard of. We started out the Panhandle. We heard about schools of Spanish all the way up in the Big Bend in February. So it's been kind of a weird winter. I can't wait to see what happens next week. And as always, we really hope you enjoy our podcast. We sure enjoy doing them, and we've heard so many nice reports about it. We appreciate it. If you do enjoy the podcast, please subscribe to it. Please like us on Facebook. You can subscribe to it through Apple Podcasts, through LibSyn, or however you get your podcasts. But that's how we build this thing, and that's how we're going to be able to do it for years in the future. So give us a like. We'd really appreciate it. Hey, and let me tell you, make sure if you enjoy the podcast to download it. You won't need an internet connection. You can hear it whenever you want to. And of course, tonight, Action Spotter Podcast has been brought to you each and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Tournament Master Chum, by Phoenix Rods, by Nosara Paradise Rentals, and by Young Boats. You want the finest in flats, bay, and hybrid offshore boats? Check out youngboats.com. As for me, I'm Captain Rick Riles, and we will see you next week with another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. So long.